Welcome to today. I'm Real Opinions, and this is I got this, I wrote it down because I knew I'd mess it up, and then I thought maybe it would be funny if I intentionally mess it up, and then I thought, no, I won't mess it up, I'll just do it properly because that'll be awkward, and then went into this very deliberately trying not to mess up, and that's what made me actually mess up. So, yeah.
So this is a really good intro.
It's the best kind of intro. It's awkward and it's emphasised by me explaining exactly why. So, hello and welcome to Real Opinions. And this is the latest episode in our Backstory Scripts podcast, where we look at scripts that have either been rejected, heavily tweaked, or basically haven't made it onto the big screen for whatever reason. And this week we're looking at Joss Whedon's by this point notorious Wonder Woman script from, was it 2006, 2007? I can't remember. I think it was 6.
Yeah, as we mentioned it in the previous podcast, because we did mention the script that we were doing next. We joked that it was called Sexist Wonder Woman, like that was just the full title basically, and because it came out around the same time that the film was coming out, right?
I think it actually leaked a little bit before. But what happened was, because of the new film, it kind of got rediscovered, and this time people paid more attention. So I think it actually had been out a bit longer, but no one gave a shit until it became popular to hate on Joss Whedon for certain personal reasons to do with his life, and then also because of Justice League coming out, he was already becoming a bit of a piñata. A punching bag. And then also, as you said, the other Wonder Woman came out, and I think that redirected attention to this, because I think it was mostly just ignored up until then.
Yeah, well, I was looking for a few of the articles just like covering the reactions to it first coming out.
Me too.
Out, and any article that was not just directly you basing their entire article off other people's tweets, where also they were they had a lot of points that were wrong about the plot.
I was going to come to that. Shall we just open with what this actually is? So this is Joss Whedon's. I don't know if this is the finished draft.
I have points on that.
You have points on that. Well, that's great. So he was working on this with Warner Brothers. It's around the point in time of Batman Begins and Superman Returns. So they were kind of making a push for all their DC properties to come back, but they weren't doing a shared universe yet. And Joss Whedon had been attached to Wonder Woman for quite a while. Before that, it was Ivan Reitman from Ghostbusters. He had quite a lot of involvement in it, which I didn't know.
I didn't know that bit.
But obviously, he's coming in with, at this point in time, I don't even think Serenity might have come out, but other than that, he is basically known for just TV. And he's also, this is before he became a piñata, and this is back when everyone loved him. So everyone assumed that what he'd written was like this holy grail kind of script, like this amazing film that we'd never get to see the light of day. But eventually Joss Whedon posted a blog where he basically said, what his actual words were, nobody liked my script, so that's why it's not going forward.
Really?
He said that, he went, I've been working on this for a while, but apparently no one liked it, so I'm now detaching from the project. And then he went on to make the Avengers. So that's what it is. There are actually more similarities than I expected to the film, like little similarities, but there are also quite a lot of massive changes. It's set in the modern day. Ares isn't a villain. It's a lot more futuristic, even though it is set in the modern day. There's like sci-fi elements.
It's a lot more comic booky.
It's a lot more comic booky, yeah.
And I suppose that also comes from the fact that we haven't had, that whole Marvel push of it's still comic books, but it's still rooted in like the reality of it.
And even though Batman Begins had just come out, we haven't had a Dark Knight yet, which really made everything be grounded. Yeah. It feels actually kind of X-Men-y, I think, and X-Men, which would make sense because X-Men had just come out. It has a similar sort of tone, I think, to a kind of an X-Men film. So anyway, it got shelved after that, and then somewhere down the line it got leaked, and everyone jumped on it with hatred, particularly related to perceived sexism. So I have a lot. There's an article, for example, from a place called the Daily Dot, who literally called it a sexist nightmare. their main criticism was that the script is constantly sexualizing and demeaning its lead character. Said it's like an evil mirror universe version of the movie we eventually got. A lot of these articles, as you said, seem to be quoting tweets. Like, so much of what you can find are tweets, like, out of context screenshots from the script with people going, ugh, Joss Whedon is trash. One point that Daily Dot article did make, and I'm going to come back to it because I did think this was weird, was that there's a lot of focus on Diana's physicality, and specifically her feet. And that is true. And I've noted down every time in the script.
I suppose, yeah.
Every time in the script that it focuses on her feet. And I was a bit like, well, this is weird. So anyway, there's lots of stuff like that. There was criticisms over the fact that it's apparently, and I'm using quotation marks here, you can't see because it's a podcast, but it's from Steve Trevor's perspective, which it isn't.
Yeah, that was the thing that I had a big problem with, because it's not.
No, it starts with Steve Trevor, but like saying that it's from his perspective is like, I mean, well, it's just wrong. I mean, it's like saying that Spider-Man Homecoming's from the Vulture's perspective, because the first scene is from his perspective, but the rest of the film isn't. So, yeah, that was...
I do have to admit that, like, I feel like I agree more with the Twitter people than you do about the script.
I do think it is sexist and weird, but I don't think that point is true.
No, but I think the thing is that if they use points where it's clear that they haven't actually even read all of the script, then it kind of defeats the purpose of why you're going into more detail of it. Like, some of the Twitter people, like, they had screenshots from all throughout the script, like, even up to the very end.
Yeah.
So clearly they've read it, but
many of them are from the beginning. So many points from the beginning. Like, the script opens, and the first time it says she is referring to a plane. And that was a big thing that everyone was upset about for some reason. I really don't know why, because that is just... I don't want to get, like... That is just what you call them. That's not sexist, that's just tradition. That's just... It's not a sexist thing. It's just that that's what they're called. And I really... That felt like people reaching when they were criticized, when that was like their opening argument. Another big criticism is that Steve Trevor spends a lot of the script kind of... And again, I'm using quotation marks, not because I disagree with it, but because I hate the word. I hate the words they invent for this stuff. Mansplaining throughout the script. Again, I actually think there's some truth to that, but I just hate the word so much that I won't say it. In the same way that I won't say problematic, even if something is... quote, problematic. I just hate the word and everything I associate with it, so I won't say it.
Right. I would definitely say that those elements, though, if anything, I'd say that the elements where Steve Trevor is talking to her and explaining the world, that's the stuff that's almost kept pretty much the same in the actual film.
But less so, because in this, he does, when he's explaining things to her, in the film, when he's explaining things to her, it's like, you've got to understand that it's not black and white, and the world isn't exactly how you see it. In this, it's like he does go, listen, princess, you're
it's more like that.
In fact, at one point, he does literally call her a princess. And
she is literally a princess. Like,
but
it's definitely condescending.
It's Han Solo talking to Leia, but like way more douchey. He does come across very douchey at first.
Also, because he comes across as righteous, whereas Han Solo's just like rebel.
Yeah,
like, he's in it for himself. Here, he's kind of like, I'm Mr. Charity. I'm saving the world my own way, and you're like perfect. You've never worked a day in your life.
To be fair, not all of the response is that negative. There's a Den of Geek article, which when I read that Den of Geek article, it made me think of the script in a slightly more positive way. Basically, he draws attention to one of Steve Trevor's rants. The one, do you remember, we'll get into it later, but the one where he sort of talks about how we don't need some super-powered god to save us. We need someone who's, like, down on their luck to be a hero anyway, despite their problems. And he gives her this big speech about how it's easy to be a hero when you're from a paradise island who's invincible and everything. And it is... what this article says is that the speech highlights some of the potential problems of Whedon's characters. namely that Steve is a jaded dickhead and Diana's got like a smarmy hero complex. But at the same time, that's kind of one of its strengths because it's acknowledging that, and when you realize that her arc is to sort of go from a slightly arrogant hero to a more level-headed, down-to-earth character, and he goes from completely jaded and dismissive, like, listen, princess, to sort of accepting his place as her sidekick. I think it seems better when you know that that's sort of where they're going, but at the same time, it does also make them kind of unlikable, considering that they are the protagonists. So it is like a double-edged thing. It's nice that they're flawed, and I think that, if anything, Diana in the film, the actual film we got, she didn't really have any flaws. She was just right and perfect all the time. But at the same time, I do think that it does make them kind of detestable at points.
Right. Yeah. No, I'd say that I kind of saw her mainly as naive as opposed to just purely arrogant, but I think that's also because of having watched the film.
Yeah.
And they definitely play up the night, like the fish out of water style thing.
Yeah.
They massively ramp that up in the film. And so I think that has kind of coloured my view of a lot of how she was represented. I think this is the first script that we've covered where I think genuinely the film that did eventually come out, I think, was better than the script. And I could tell from your hesitation you don't necessarily agree with that, and you know I didn't love Wonder Woman. I just thought it was fine, but there were moments of this where I thought it was less than fine, and so...
Yeah, no, I don't know if I agree. Like, I know that you saw my hesitation, you assumed that I was gonna, like... I don't know. I think in some ways, I think it is a lot better. And then in other ways, I think it's a lot worse. It's a bit like an Alien Engineers situation where I'm like, I don't know, you kind of improved it and then you kind of didn't at the same time. I don't know. I think I would put them about equal, but if I'm being perfectly honest, I think I'd have probably enjoyed this more as a film, if nothing else, just because at least it would have had the giant robot.
Do we want to get into the film then, the script?
Yeah, we'll get into the film.
Like, from my brief research behind it, is that it was originally done, the first version of the script was done around March 2006, and then there is another statement about a month before this one, before this script, saying that it's been sent off and it's done and they're just working on changes now, and then it was a month after this date, which is August 7th, 2006, for the script that we're reading, that it was cancelled.
Okay.
So really, we are actually looking at the closest version, but as well as when it was cancelled, Joss Whedon said something along the lines of, like, some companies keep you, like, sending back and forth endless rewrites, and this company cut out the middleman. So I think what we're looking at is the closest script to the cancellation, possibly, but also not finished by any means. Like, this felt like a second draft kind of thing to me. Like, if anything, a first draft, because it feels, again, in part of the bit where I went into, like, how I think the finished film is slightly better, in that this feels very all over the place for a lot of the time, and very surface level, even more than the film that we got.
Yeah, I would
surface level.
I would agree with you, and then I think my counterpoint, however, would be that I think that there's more interesting stuff in this, even if it's not refined. Yeah, like whereas the film we got was like a perfectly serviceable, bland, shoulder shrug of a film. I think that there is, like you said, conceptually more interesting stuff in here. It's just, I agree with you, a little messy and very clunky at times. So, the script actually opens with text, a bit like Star Wars text or whatever. So it explains who the Amazons are. It tells you that they were the most powerful warriors on Earth. They were never defeated until Ares got jealous of their power and had them imprisoned and bound their wrists in like a mystical chain that kind of takes away all of their strength. So the queen of the Amazons, who's called Hippolyte, Hippolyte, Mother Wonder Woman. She prayed to Athena for deliverance from their slavery, and basically they got sent off to Themyscira, their own little world away from men, where they could live in harmony. Then that's the backstory all out of the way.
That's the much shorter backstory than the actual film.
Yes.
Which is all we needed.
So what then happens is we cut to the modern day, and we're introduced to a plane mid-crash. It really does open like that. Steve Trevor is flying a plane with some supplies that he's going to deliver to
refugees.
Refugees
in like a nation, a war-torn nation, very vague, apolitical.
And so this is where it refers to the plane as a she, by the way. So the plane is flying through a storm. It's extreme weather, and he's talking to Ben, who is a character we'll meet later. And Ben, there's a lot of Joss Whedon quips throughout, and none of them are particularly good, apart from a couple.
Good. I'm glad, because I thought you'd enjoy some of them. But...
No, there were a couple. I'm going to be honest, there were a couple.
And I'll probably point them out.
But this was the first one. This is the first one. I noted it down because it was the first time the script wasn't entirely bland, which is where Ben over the radio says there may be a little weather, and Steve in the middle of this like raging storm goes like, okay, I'll look out for that then. Sarcasm, ha ha ha. So then he crashes on Themyscira, on the paradise island of the Amazons, and the door is pulled off its hinges, and that's where we meet Diana, who's come to save him. And instantly, this is how she is described. And I've written it down.
I thought you were going to read out this as a quote. Yeah.
So, to say she is beautiful is to almost miss the point. She is elemental, as natural and wild as the luminous flora surrounding her. He goes at great lengths to describe her dark hair, and then following that says, her body is curvaceous, but taut as a drawn bow. She is barefoot. This is the first time that we will focus on her feet, but there is plenty more to come. So, yeah, that's how she is introduced, as curvaceous and taut, which was a bit creepy, but compared to the John Spaeth stuff that we've read, I guess at least she was conscious.
Yeah.
So...
Very active protagonist for John Spaeth.
For context, we've read a couple of others on here where female characters are introduced in a similar fashion, but each time they have been asleep.
Almost unconscious.
They've been asleep or knocked out or something, and it's a bit...
And it is the male character, literally, like, it's very literal version of male gaze, isn't it?
Yeah. So Diana finds Steve, sort of helps him out of the plane, and then she's instantly set upon by all the other Amazons. Now, in this script, compared to the film, in the film, the Amazons are like a very tight community. They're all together, and they all like help each other and go, Diana, we love you. in this, it's really cutthroat. I don't know if I liked that more or not, but it was like a very hostile, kind of harsh world. And because as soon as she's introduced, there's like this other Amazon woman who hates Diana, and she's like, you need to follow the rules, he's a man, you should kill him. And it's like really like full on from minute one. And then Steve comes in with another Joss Whedon quip when he sees that they're all like dressed in their tribal gear with spears and things. He says, so did any of you guys hear about the 20th century? It just happened. It was so cool. That face was mine too.
That was great.
So Diana and the Amazons decide they're going to take Steve to their big city to have like a trial with the Queen to decide what they're going to do with her. So they go on a walk. Along the walk, we find out why they can all understand what Steve is saying, because all languages come from the same place. So that gets rid of that kind of weird.
All languages come from the same place, so that Steve can also understand them. That's works both ways. Apparently, it doesn't at all.
And then when they enter the city, so they walk into the city, and we meet Diana's friend. And it was when we met Diana's friend that I went, oh god, everything they're saying is true. Because it was like at that point, that was, for context, the reason this podcast has taken so long is because I couldn't get through the first 20 pages of this script. every time I started, I like went, oh my god, I can't. I was forcing myself. Would take such a long break that I'd forget it all and had to start again. Because the first 20 pages of this are brutal. And when it introduced Diana's friend, I did genuinely go, oh no, what have I done? What have I chosen? Because it introduces Athera, and it says she is more student than athlete, but very lovely. Which sounds like something that like a weird rapey cab driver would say, like when he lets someone into the you're very lovely. And then the first
no
thing
athlete,
is,
but very lovely.
and that's like a very Joss Whedon thing, like he likes these like bookish cute girls that they're in Buffy and all like
Indie girls.
yeah she's nerdy but she's still pretty. She's still pretty. And then she whispers in Diana's ear something that we don't hear. She whispers in the ear, and Diana sort of like shakes her head, and then Athera just goes, well, I would have while I had the chance. And we know that she's talking about Steve's cock. So, so like the first, it's like they're just like a man. It was like it's like there's a Monty Python sketch where I think is it Sir Galahad? Like in the Holy Grail, he walks into a castle just with these like women, and it's just women that live there, so they're all really horny and fawning over him. And that's what this like reminded me of. It's just as soon as Steve shows up, they're all whispering about his penis.
But that's her sole purpose of her character. That's the only thing she talks about.
Yeah.
Is that?
No, that's not true. That's not true. She's also there for Steve to ask questions later.
Oh, that's true.
So,
exposition and wanting him.
Yeah.
That's the only reason she's there.
So Diana, before that we meet Hippolyte, the Queen, and Diana's mother, and she is introduced with Hippolyte is every inch a queen, noble, beautiful, thoughtful. She is middle-aged, but very much in her prime. So it's instantly like, she's old, but I would.
Yeah, it is.
And it is at this point that,
questionable descriptions.
It was at this point that I was thinking, you know what, these tweets weren't that far off, because every woman is described, like reassuring us. She might be nerdy, but she's still hot, or she might be old, but she's still hot, and that's like all of them. So they bring Steve in and they wrap the lasso of truth around him. And instead of interrogating him, they've got... I suppose, should we explain what the lasso of truth is in case people don't know?
I think people from the film, it's a lasso that if you're stuck in it, you tell the truth. Yeah,
you're compelled to tell the truth. That's it, great. So they wrap that around Steve and ask him a series of questions, like, are you a spy? And he goes, no, and all these things. And they say, like, if we let you go, will you tell anyone about this place? He says no. They go, even for money or for power? No. To save your own life? No. So they're like, okay, good, because they don't want anyone to know. They don't want mankind to know.
Yeah.
But then they ask, but would you tell people if it would save your friends or family? And because he's in the lasso of truth, he's just compelled to go, oh yeah. And so they decide, right, well that's it then, we've got to kill him. We can't let him out. This was a bit confusing. They say, because he explains why he's there, he explains that he's delivering all this aid to refugees. And Diana's like, see, you can't kill him, he's a good man. He's a good man, and people will die if we don't let him go. And they say, okay, well, how about this? We'll deliver the aid if we kill you. Is that okay? Like, we'll kill you and we'll deliver the aid, which defeats the point, because they don't want contact with the outside world. So they'll kill him, and then they'll go out to the outside world to deliver the supply. But whatever.
It's not the most thought out thing in the world, is it?
So they throw him in jail to await...
I think it's purely for the reason that it shows that he values the job more than his own life.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And it further proves that.
So they throw him in jail to await execution the next day. I'm rattling through this part because this part was so boring to read, Just like in the main film, the part on Themyscira was so
I
dull.
think you could rattle faster, to be honest, because this is exactly just the other film, isn't it? It's just
so he gets put in
of the other film.
He gets put in jail. I'm going to linger on this bit a bit because this was where I really thought that Steve came across as a massive tool from like minute one. They put him in jail, and Diana goes to visit him to like go, "Hey, tell me about the outside world. What's it like?" And he gets like angsty because he's about to die and he doesn't want to spend his last night.
How playing tour guide is what the line is like. I don't want to play tour guide to a debutante.
I think he said Discovery Channel for a debutante, but yeah, he calls her a debutante and a princess, and then he has like this rambling rant about like, oh, my imminent death is all about you. You know, I thought all languages were as one, but I'm telling you to get the hell out of my face, and you don't understand that. and then he says, I can't stay up all night doing this, and she goes, can't? Question mark, and he goes, can't? Is that another word that you don't know? It means are unable to. And he's like, he comes across as a massive dick, and it's like she's not doing anything. She's just come in to ask a few questions. And
There's a lot of recurring jokes in this one, which just instantly remind me of the only thing I actually remember from Age of Ultron, which is the language.
Is this the can't thing?
That's like a hilarious recurring joke, and can't is somehow a recurring joke in this script, as well as guns, but we'll get to that.
So, despite the fact that he is like a massive arsehole, like a boorish, rude prick, Diana still wants to save him. So on the day of his execution, she incites like a trial by combat. And she has to fight the Amazon's strongest warrior in order to save Steve. So she's fighting for him. And the strongest warrior is her own mother. So it's a mother-daughter fight.
So it's drama.
Yeah, and the sort of the prize on the line for her is she'll get to save Steve and go with him because she's got like the Disney princess. I want to go out there
where the people are.
Yeah. she wants to leave, and her mother's like, "No, Diana, you can't. It's dangerous. You don't know what you are." It's the same as the other film. It's the same, but this time it's sexist. And so they're having this fight, and this is one joke. I feel like I'm going to tell this joke, and you're going to look at me exactly the same as you did when I told the jokes that I thought were bad. But this one did make me smile a little when that nod means you are. Athera said that this might seem strange to you, and you went, "No, my mom and I did this all the time." That made me smile.
That made me I'll admit smile. Yeah. Like. So
Diana's mother actually wins the fight, but when she sees how much it means to her daughter, she just goes, "Oh, I'll let you go anyway." But not before giving her a like great power comes great responsibility speech about how the world will ruin her, but you can't let it take away who you are. That's the one thing that you. That's the one thing you need to keep a hold of.
One thing I will distract from to talk about the fight is that a sword. She literally gets a sword sliced on her shoulder, and the sword breaks rather than her shoulder. So she's way tougher than like the film. Well, than I was led to believe beforehand. Like, because I have very little exposure, because I don't read the comic books or anything like that. I don't know much about Wonder Woman at all.
If I understand it correctly, I think the implication is only like a god could kill her. If he's like a human, doesn't have a chance. If I'm understanding it, or like magic or whatever, you know. I don't think a mortal. I know it's a sword.
I didn't know if it was linked to the island or not, because she said something about one point about how if you leave, you become weaker, and then so the sword just breaks on her, but. As we see later on, a bullet can hurt her. Yeah, it did. Yeah, I suppose that's true. I just didn't know if that was it being. I hate the word plot hole, but I didn't know if it was just a discrepancy or if it was something that you knew about the fact that she's strong on the island or something.
Well, you know that I know quite. Like, I read comic books. I've read comic books since I was a kid, but I have never read a Wonder Woman comic book ever.
Oh right.
And I'm not going to be one of those douchebags like on other podcasts and other YouTube places where they pretend that they have. I haven't, so I don't know. Anything I know about Wonder Woman is from research or from when she's appeared in other characters' comic books.
Okay.
So
right.
that's the extent of my knowledge. So she lets her fly the nest, and then quite abruptly, he's flying away. They have like a very kind of...
yeah. No,
it's like
just
that,
isn't it?
which I appreciated because I was getting really fed up with this part of the island. But at the same time, it was like all of those other characters that they set up, forget them. They're not coming back.
I feel like that with a lot of this film, to be honest. It's great.
Because like the one that she has the rivalry with, who cares?
Yeah.
The old lady that's like mystical and wise, who I didn't even introduce. She's that important. And then her horny, bookish friend, all gone. Just gone. And, like, the goodbye is like, oh, I'm gonna go now, mother. Don't let the world ruin you. Okay. And then, in a plane, right on the next page. I like I said, I was kind of glad, though, because it was really dragging at this point. So they're flying away, and we get another description of Diana. She's in a simple white tunic, which... on her is anything but simple. I don't even know what that means, but it sounds pervy.
I don't know if that means it's actually like decorative because it's a civilization, or if it just means that he's like, she's so curvy, it looks impressive.
I think that's what it means, but I honestly don't know. So they're flying away, and Steve gets a call from Ben, the character who was talking to him on the plane before. And Ben says something about, like, you gotta hurry up, Skipper. And Skipper's their code word for we're in trouble. So Steve says, all right, I'm gonna land the plane, and you stay in the back. Don't get out. Don't let anyone know you're here. Steve lands, gets out, and this is where we meet the one-dimensional sidekicks, who, to be fair, were one-dimensional in that fucking film anyway. But they're different this time. One of them's a woman.
Yeah, but...
so there's...
there's also the difference is that they have even less to do, apparently, which I didn't think was possible for side characters, but they have even less to do.
So there's Ben. He's the one who's been talking to him on the plane. It says he's dark-skinned. That's about all we get about him.
He's kind of leader-ish. Like
he's second.
The more adult of the lot.
He's the main one of this bunch. Then there's Sully, who is a doctor and also a lady.
It's emphasised, yeah.
I'm sure she's described as, like, her hair isn't as pretty as Diana's, but it'll do. Like, she's still... We're given some kind of indication as to how attractive
Irish,
she is.
red hair, a bright contrast to Diana's efficient but warm to the core.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, like, she's still pretty.
Yeah, it's...
Griffin... Who,
and surfer dude.
Yeah, Griffin is a surfer dude. And then Goshnak.
Yeah.
He's the warlord.
Which is just like, they couldn't decide which country they were going to, so they just melded every kind of evil villain name from every country to make Goshnak.
He's a Klingon.
Who's basically just... He's just going on about real-ish, or whatever they say in Discovery. But he's basically just standing on the runway, like, he's basically saying, I'm evil, and they're like, but we want to deliver this stuff to the poor people that you are, like, hurting, and he's like, screw you, I want to take all of your supplies for myself.
They have to do the Han Solo thing, they have, like, a Han and Jabba kind of thing, where it's like, you've screwed me over before, but I'm not going to kill you, because you're a rogue.
Yeah, but it's not really, you can tell because he's the evil warlord, that they're the good guys this time, rather than Han Solo just trying to cut a few... things out of the deal, and basically they just say something about like, have you got us a bribe? And he says like, oh, I haven't got a petty bribe, I've got a great bribe. And the guy's saying, no, I want all of it, blah blah blah. And then Diana steps out and he goes, now that's a great bribe.
And when Diana steps out, her foot touches the floor, and we get a close-up on her foot touching the floor, but this time it actually is for a reason.
Important, yeah.
This time it matters, because this is the first time she's set foot on not Themyscira, on the world of man. So when she steps on the ground, we get like a load of descriptions about how like the world around her is reacting, like the wind and the plants and the wildlife all sort of like get startled and react. And then a figure in a dark room turns slightly, hearing something no one else can. So it's like as soon as her foot touches the ground,
it awakens something.
It awakens something. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, the guy basically says like, that's a quality bribe. Like, she's a great bribe. And then, because Diana is Diana, she's kind of going like, "Why are you hurting these people?" And gosh,
I'm made of clay.
The most evil person, yes, the most evil person in the world is saying like, "Don't you talk against me?" And she keeps going forward, and he holds a gun at her, but she doesn't know what a gun is, and he shoots her, and basically says like, "Bring all the stuff to me. I'm done with this. I'm off."
Yeah.
And so they rush to go help Diana, and it cuts to like them all waiting outside the doctor's tent, and the doctor comes out, and this was one of the things where I thought was genuinely different, fun, for at least what made me smile, was when she says, "I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do." And then Diana steps right out, and that's the joke, is that she's already healed herself, and she's been like knocked out for 6 hours.
Yeah.
And she says like about how petty that makes her feel that Iron has knocked her out for 6 hours or something like that.
I would add, though, that whilst you've just complimented it, I'm about to criticise it, because Griffin then says, "I can't believe Goshnak. Who the hell shoots an unarmed, tasty-looking girl?" That's what he actually says.
Surfer dude. Yeah, great.
Tasty-looking girl.
And she basically comes straight out of the doctor's tent and says, "I'm going to go deal with this rebel base." Where did that come from? Yeah.
I'm going to crush the rebellion. Camp. She's a fascist. She's arrived and it's like, the problem with this is the people rising up. We've got to instill order. No, yeah, she goes to save the people. But before that, Jack, we actually cut to our intro scene.
Oh, while she's unconscious, yes, there is the cutaway that's completely pointless.
This villain introduction was one of the most bizarrely written scenes that I have read for this podcast yet. Because we introduce, there's the reporter skulking around in like a weird, dank, dark place.
The sewers almost, like, is how I imagined it, like underground tunnels underneath the city, and it's shown that it's underneath the city. Before
we even had an introduction to the city, so it's already a bit disorientating, and you're like, what? Yes. Where are we? Who's this? And it takes its time introducing these two characters, a reporter and like the person who's escorting her around, who's giving her a hot scoop. And this was where I really went, wait, what? Did Joss Whedon write this? Where the guy goes, "You're not a reporter, are you?" And she says, and I quote, "Yes, I told you that. That's why you brought me here. You have something to show me." Which was I was like, wait, what? What is this?
It was a confusing joke, and then they just followed it up with the most obvious exposition possible.
It was so strange. I was really like, hang on.
I was expecting her to almost go into like, and I need one big story to really break open this case because my editor's been busting my balls. I really need to get this case.
Because it was Joss Whedon, I was expecting it to follow up with some kind of knowing joke about the fact that they were doing that somehow. But no, that was just it. It was just, yes, I told you that. That's why you brought me here. You have something to show me. I don't know what he came to show her. Was it the painting?
It's incredibly vague because then Strife shows up and kills them both and makes it seem like it was some trick.
The villain who, when I read this, I thought, oh my god, he is the prototype for Steppenwolf. He is a bland god who doesn't really have a very clear motivation or any kind of personality or anything. He's just a guy. But he's Ares' nephew. I guess he's kind of like the Vader to the main villain's Emperor, but he's like, part of his thing is that he's uncontrollable and just sort of does whatever he wants. I don't really know why he was taking orders in the first place. But anyway, Strife is Ares' nephew, Ares being the god of war. And in the comics...
He's just Ares Jr.
Yeah. In the comics, Strife is a female villain. But for whatever reason, it's now a male villain.
In some ways, I suppose you could argue that that's maybe for the purpose of making it so that it's Diana standing up against a male villain, like defeating the person that's corrupting man. But at the same time, I don't know why you would pick a female villain
to do that,
change it. Yeah. Why would you, instead of just pick a male villain? It's just another. It's of all the missteps in this script, it's one of the minor ones.
Yeah. So the only important piece of information we really get from this is that Strife can teleport. He kind of like forms from the ground.
Oh, yes, of course.
This is relatively important. He sort of like a weird eruption happens in the ground, and then he shoots up from it. Also, at this point I didn't understand it, but now that I've read the rest of the script, I do kind of understand it. We see that there's something running underneath the city and it's described as like a big metal face or something. I was really like, what is happening? There's a thing.
I still don't know really what they were going for.
There's a big machine underground that's like digging underneath the city.
Oh, burrowing, yes, yeah. Right,
That's what it is. Now we cut back to Diana. She wakes up, she's fine, and she goes to attack the warlord who stole all that stuff. And just before you say anything, I have a very important point. So she sneaks in, starts attacking everyone, and then this is a genuine part of the action as written in the script. Diana leaps into the midst of the men. The truck is between us and them, but the camera inches under, watching her feet going as Diana spins and kicks. It's an entire action scene where we're focused on her feet.
See, at the time when I was reading it, I thought, oh, at least he's trying to, like... People say against directing in a script. I think sometimes it can be more interesting because it shows you've actually got, like, you can visualise it as well as you've got maybe some interesting ideas. I thought, oh, okay, this is slightly different. But now that you've reframed the entire script around him having something to do with feet, now it is weird. But it's only weird because you've made it weird.
Well, he does actually, now that you point that out, he does direct quite a lot in this. Because when Gosnak...
More than usual.
Gosnak...
I'm used to.
Grosnak... when the Klingon runs out, he starts pointing a gun at her. And it's a POV shot. And he specifies that it's a POV shot.
It's like a first-person shooter.
And he shoots at her, but this time she blocks with her bracelet. And then something happens. I don't know. She wins.
And then she keeps blocking it, and then she says... like, I don't like guns, which is a classic, recurring joke from this.
Yeah.
And she says, don't hurt these people ever again, headbutts them, walks away, job done.
Yeah.
Like, no deaths is an important point for that.
Well, the most important thing is that afterwards, Diana has a conversation with Ben. And in this conversation, she asks if Steve and Sully are mates. And Ben goes, mates? And she goes, do they mate? Then when he says, no... She goes, well, that's not important to me. I don't care about that. So it's like every female character in this wants to sleep with Steve, and it's a weirdly emphasized thing. The next scene is with Strife meeting with his emperor, who is called Kalas.
Yeah, very unclear as to why there is the power dynamic that there is there.
No.
But basically, when we were shown the city before, it started off with showing this big skyscraper.
Which, by the way, we haven't been introduced to the city yet. That's the next scene. But before that, we get a scene in the city.
So we've seen the shot of the city, then gone into the sewers. Now we're seeing inside the skyscraper that we saw in the city, but not the city. And it's like it's a superhero city like Gotham or Metropolis that I've never heard of before. I don't know if it is a. Big
it is
thing
It's Wonder Woman's city.
Okay,
it is her city.
It just sounded like it was made up for the script, but
although the Spearhead building is made up for the script. The building and the business that we are in.
It is repeatedly mentioned as phallic. They're just in the top of this, and they're having some kind of board meeting or whatever, and they're like finishing up the board meeting, and then Callis goes up to the wall and like taps an evil painting, and it comes aside, and it's like a war room where they're keeping track of all local governments sparring around the world, and are like, I think they say something like. Talks have broken down between these two rival countries, and they go, good, give a bonus to the translator. Like, that, I thought that was kind of funny, at least. And then she gets a scrap of paper saying something like, no casualties for this one tribe, this one warlord in the middle of nowhere. It's already come back to us that he was dispatched with no casualties. And then, what's-his-face? Strife appears next to him, and they go down into this little basement shrine to Ares where they're praying for him, and basically just says like
they say something like his statue is hanging up like the whale in the Natural History Museum.
Yes, yeah, which was oddly specific, but it made me realise exactly what they were going for.
That's what I thought too.
It's very confusing, this scene, because it starts off in a boardroom, then she goes into a secret war room, then she goes into a secret temple, and then she goes into a secret silo, which then goes into a secret tunnel under the city. So there's so many secret rooms that I have no idea how they're meant to connect to each other.
Very late. Like a Russian pot doll of evil layers.
It's the babushka doll of evil layers.
So we're introduced to the Chimera, which is obviously a monster from Greek myth, but here it's a big robot-y drill machine.
It's like an evil version of Thunderbird 6.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Oh no, the mole. The mole. He's not. He hasn't got a number.
All right, if you say so. And then Callus says something about like Strife calls it a monster, and she goes, "It's not a monster, it's a machine." This is another recurring joke. And she goes, "But your age of monsters is over." And then Strife goes, "Is it though?" And it sounds like an evil line, but in my head, he says it like Thor does in Thor Ragnarok when he goes, "Is it though?" like that's how I wanted him to say it. Is it though? Now we're introduced to Gateway City as Diana actually enters it. So Gateway City is from the comic books, and it is in the comics. It's the home to the largest collection of Greek stuff outside of Greece. So it's like it's like Little Italy, but it's Greece.
Oh, right. Okay.
In this, instead, it's actually like a cultural hub of the world.
New York.
But it's a little different because they make it sound like it's almost like not the UN. What's that place called in Star Trek Beyond,
Brussels.
where all of the cultures live together and like in one place? It's like a huh?
Coruscant.
That's Star Wars.
I know, it was the joke.
Oh. Holy shit.
I don't know.
It should have been in this script. Anyway, it's a big multicultural place, but it's also a very violent, scary place. Yeah, she walks past a hooker. Guess how the hooker's described?
Oh, yes.
The hooker is
I forgot about that.
The hooker is described as wearing an outfit that is skimpier than Diana's. Where he's successfully managed to demean both the hooker and Diana in one stage direction. It's quite impressive. It's a double whammy.
Yeah.
So she walks through and she gets a bit like she walks past like a TV showing the world of men and war, and she's like, "Oh my god, it's a terrible place."
This is the part where I found the most confusing part of the script.
Okay.
Because they get into they fly over the city, and she's like looking over, and she goes, "Oh, it's so overwhelming," or whatever. And then she says, "I want to go around the city," and he's like, "I don't want to let you go around on your own." And it just cuts to her going around on her own. And it has like all these things where she's reacting to things, and then just stuff just seems to keep happening until she eventually meets up with the villain. Like it's and not in a beginning of The Incredibles kind of way where it's actually kind of fun. It's just confusing.
It feels a bit rushed. Like everything in this moves at a quick pace. Like I was thinking at one point, like, yes, this is kind of dull, but at the same time, it's very fast. Like, everything happens very quickly, and there's never really a moment where the characters just talk to talk. It's just like,
it's always the only moments are Steve and Diana, and it's just Steve going like, "You don't understand anything."
Yeah,
and that's the only character scenes there are.
Yeah.
So she's watching this TV like afraid of war or whatever, and she's getting annoyed. She's getting like. Realising that she's kind of maybe a bit over her head, and she hears someone being mugged in an alleyway, so she goes in and tries to stop the mugging, and then for some reason rats are coming out of the sewer while that's happening, and so she's like, "Stop this, I'm not going to stop this dealer anymore." Although she whips the dealer and finds out who he works for, and then runs off to find why the rats are afraid, and then apparently she runs straight into this building that the evil corporation is watching through CCTV because they want to destroy this building, and she just walks in and she goes like, "Everybody, this building's collapsing because I can sense it because I saw rats outside," and everyone starts fleeing the scene, and she goes, and it's a very vague saving people montage where she seems to be on the ground floor, then she's on another floor, then she's helping people on a stairwell, and then all of a sudden she gets punched in the kidneys. Like, it's not clear when that happens, and then Strife appears. Strife? Yeah. And punches, and like gut punches her, and then there's a fight, and Strife teleports her to a middle of a windswept mountain, snowy mountain, where they have... Do you not remember this?
No. What?
So, like, Strife jumps at her in like a tackle move, and they kind of like bubbly evaporate, and they appear on a snowy mountain, and he says something like, "I'm Strife," and she goes, "I know who you are, you're not as strong as I thought you were going to be." He jumps at her again, and then they go back into the building, and it's the most bizarre use of teleportation. I don't know why it was necessary whatsoever.
Probably to introduce what happens later.
Yes, yeah.
But it is. It all. Would you agree that it all feels like it's on fast forward at this point? Like meets villain.
Yes.
You're not as tough as I thought you were. This is my city. Stay out. You're collapsed now. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the thing is, like, I suppose he's kind of distracted her by going to the snowy mountain, and then when they jump back to the building collapses on her, and he disappears on his own. But she survived that. And then there is the awkward recovery scene in Steve's flat.
The awkward recovery scene is one that I have written down almost entirely. I'm not going to read everything. I'm going to read the highlights, because this scene, if I think if some of those Twitter people got this far, this scene would have been like the one.
Yeah, I was surprised by the lack of this scene on Twitter, because this is the worst one.
So
and it didn't seem to get the mention that much. Oh, maybe no, it is the worst one. Yeah.
So she's like passed out and in some state of undress. I don't quite know what.
No, but the building collapses. The building collapses on her, and then it cuts to her being naked in bed.
Yeah,
it's like,
which again I thought was like
so
a flashback or something. Like she, I thought like she was passed out and it was a dream or a flashback, but it was just we just missed the scene where someone finds her. It's just she's in bed naked now. Okay, and
or even that she was completely fine. It's just. What's important is that she's now naked in bed.
I don't even think that Diana explains what happened to Steve.
No.
So we've missed so much time that not only is she waking up in bed naked, but she's also explained what happened to Steve and still in bed naked. Rather than this is when she is waking up. It's like we're halfway through a conversation. She says something. I don't quite remember what. I think it's... There's all these signs here that it's no coincidence that I'm here and Strife's here too. Don't you think? And then this is what he says. I think you're dangerous. I think you mean well, but you're looking for trouble. In my head, this was written in this, like he was doing like a 1940s like
voice. I knew what you were gonna say. Yeah.
Like
it sounds like he's doing like a noir voiceover.
Yeah, it sounds like Michael Shannon in The Shape of Water. Like like who always talks about men and how women should be. I think you're dangerous. I think you mean well, but you're looking for trouble, and you're wildly adept at finding it. It is noir voice. It's noir voice. I think you've got delusions of grandeur and some actual grandeur, which is confusing. I don't like confusing. Which is like him going, I like my women simple ones. I don't like work. Then he says, I hate the fact that I'm so attracted to you. Just touching you is overwhelming, and I keep hoping you'll turn around so I can see more of you naked. That is what he actually says in one go. That's all one line of dialogue. It's not interrupted. It's just one speech. And then it turns out that he's sitting on the lasso of truth, which is obviously a thing.
Yeah, obviously, that's the little joke, but it is kind of.
It's what he reused in the Justice League as well, because it's what happens to Aquaman.
Oh, great.
But it was. I completely agree. It was noir voice in my head when you were saying it, particularly the. You're confusing. I don't like confusing. That in my head was so well suited to noir detective.
And then I like that basically it's like her slyly trying to get him to say what she wants to hear, whatever. And then he gets up and says like, men don't like talking about their feelings.
Yes, he does. He goes right down like,
I'm annoyed now. And then she also,
cock.
just in case you weren't clear that she was like naked on the bed, she then gets up and does like the tucking the sheet around her as she goes around the room.
I don't remember when. It might have already happened. But there's a part where she's getting dressed. Like in the plane, and it specifies
that was right at the very beginning,
and it specifies that like she's facing away from us, but she's naked. Oh boy!
Yeah,
but she's
you can clearly see her getting changed. Is what it was what it's hinting at. Yeah.
So that was a bit weird. Now what we get is a montage where Diana goes around like beating up criminals and saving people to try and like coax Strife out like to annoy him. That goes on.
Because that's the best bit in every superhero film, where the superhero tries to mildly annoy the villain to come out of hiding.
And it culminates in a little girl who says like...
This was actually genuinely one of my favourite bits in the script.
Oh, do you want to do it then?
Oh, okay, sure. It's just that like it all culminates in... It's kind of like... I've already mentioned The Incredibles montage.
Yep.
It's kind of like the thing in that where basically it all ends up with like she's doing gunfights, she's stopping drug dealers and all of that, and it ends with her walking down the street and a little girl points at her cat in a tree and says like, my cat's stuck in the tree, and Diana just looks up at it and then back at the girl and just says, climb. which I thought was funny because it's just doing the typical Joss Whedon thing of taking a trope and then changing it for comedy, but also it does emphasize that whole, like, which they did focus a lot more in the actual film, is that Diana's kind of like the do-it-yourself, empowering, as much as I hate that term now that it's been overused. She doesn't have to help everyone because she's a hero. She can help people help themselves, and I quite liked that.
Okay.
I just because it was a thing that as well is that it's such a common, like, cat stuck in a tree is such a common thing that I liked that it was different.
Now we move into what is either going to be, like, I don't know with you. This might be your least favourite part, or maybe your most favourite part. I don't know. The nightclub.
Least favourite.
Interesting. I was going to say
this is your favourite.
I was going to say this is when I started to enjoy it more, apart from the one really creepy bit.
You mean the script?
So she shows up to this nightclub, and they make a point of how it's got a reflective surface for a ceiling.
Oh, yeah.
So the roof is a mirror where you can see everyone dancing.
Which somehow manages to make all of the... Some of the scenes have been confusing before. This makes it even more confusing, where he will repeatedly say, "That's a shot," but actually you were looking in a mirror, but now we're going out the mirror. And
So he goes to meet... She's there to meet Clean, who is the drug dealer. He's the big drug dealer. And this part...
Mr. Clean.
When they introduced him, I thought... Like, I don't know if you've ever seen when people, like, do parody writing of Joss Whedon. I remember, like, when Justice League before Justice League came out, and it was announced that he was going to do some rewrites, there were, like, joke, like, leaked versions of what he'd written, and everyone's talking in, like, a heightened Joss Whedon way. This line here felt like something from that, like, not real Joss Whedon. It says, "We know he's in charge because his booth is the boothiest." Which is very Joss. It's very, like, Buffy when people just add "eist" to the end of something, or "e." Boothy, boothiest, things like that.
Quirky.
It's very Joss Whedon. It feels like a parody. She goes up to this guy who's got a coked out girl, like, lying on him, and he says something like, "Get off me, skanko." I can't remember. So it's managed to be sexist and racist at the same time. And then based on literally no evidence at all, instead of attacking this guy, Diana gives him a lecture about how there's good in him, which is based entirely on the few seconds we spent with him in which he's pushed his girlfriend away and called her a skank. She goes, "There's good in you, I can tell." And I was like, what? Why?
I was quite confused by this, and the characters are confused as well. Like, why does he get a pep talk? Because I think the line, and she's just kind of like, "I saw good in him." Like, no, why does he? Why? Suddenly now you have the ability to see into people's souls. Like, what happened to the people in the montage that you just saw?
No, they were just bad. They were just rotten to the core.
Were you beating up drug dealers that were like low men that were like fearful for their lives? They're bad. But the guy that controls them is good, apparently.
But to be fair to him, what he says is something like, "Whatever," and lets her go. And then they go over to the bar, and they're all kind of like, "What do we do now?" And Diana just decides to dance. And when I read...
she gets given a glass of red wine by the bartender, and they say it's from upstairs.
Yes.
And that's a clue.
She goes to dance. Possibly the creepiest part of the script here.
Yes.
She gets onto the stage, starts dancing, and it says that, like, because she's doing, like, weird foreign dancing, it looks like it could all go wrong. But then they let you know that it doesn't go wrong, and it's in fact very sensual. Because what it says was... She moves her leg back and turns, fluidly, a curve rippling up her body. That sounds like some body horror shit, I don't know what that means. And she folds into a dance that is sensual, ethereal, and wicked sexy.
I thought, if there's one line that dates this film to the mid-2000s, it's wicked sexy.
And then Griffin, the surfer dude, just says, like, "It's Christmas," or something.
It's like Christmas.
Yeah. Steve is pretending not to look because he doesn't want anyone to know that she's attractive, but he's really looking up at the mirror where he can see her dancing.
I like how it says that these two characters are staring, but Steve is also staring. Just to be sure,
like,
every character is staring.
He's peeking and perving, but doing it in an indirect way, which makes it okay. He's peering at her reflection.
There's one paragraph that I completely forgot that this happens, where it's after them staring. The beat gets faster, and so does Diana, shaking and tossing her hair. A Euro trashy guy moves to her, but she turns unseeing. A Rasta guy nudges out the Euro guy, who grabs him and sends him back. And as the dance get more frantic, Rasta gives Euro a shove, sending him flying back. Why? Why are we suddenly now wrapped into this beef between two stereotypes in a club fighting for her attention, and she's just doing whatever? Why is that a whole paragraph?
Because
anyway, okay.
I think I know why. And it doesn't make sense. It doesn't necessarily make sense written down, but I think in visual form it might make more sense, because what happens then is everyone freezes, some of them in midair, and I think if you have two people fighting like that, when they freeze, it would kind of draw more attention to it.
Right. Okay. Because this was very confusing as well. Yeah. I do get it now. Yeah. And it's because it goes into slow motion because of the drink that she had, because of the wine.
Is that what it's... I didn't make that connection. I just know everyone...
No, because he at the end of the scene that we're just about to get is that the character says, "Did you like the drink?"
Oh, okay.
Like, I think it's an improvement, or like, I might do this next time, or something like that.
When I said that the nightclub bit was where it got better, I meant when we get to the next character, because I don't know, I thought it made it more interesting. So she goes upstairs, because as you said, upstairs gave him the drink, and when everything slows down, someone like opens the I don't know what you call it.
The velvet rope.
Yeah, velvet rope.
Lets her through. Yeah.
She goes upstairs, and there she finds, how do you say it? Bacchus?
Bacchus.
The god of wine, and he says something like, I like how you knew to dance for me, or something, because like that was why she did it, because it's his thing.
It's his kink.
Yeah, and he is described as like possibly the most Joss Whedon-y character in the whole thing, because he's like an unassuming guy, but cute in a sheepish way, which was basically Joss Whedon's way of saying, me. He's like Xander in Buffy, or thousands of others. But I thought he was relatively fun, and then they ditch him straight after the scene.
Yeah, he's in one scene, it's pointless, but also I found it creepy just from the sheer fact that he starts it with like, "I like how you knew to dance."
But I think he's meant to be creepy, isn't he?
I know, but that doesn't make it any less because it's meant to be creepy. But okay, what is the point of this scene?
So Bacchus, are you asking me as an actual question, or are you just getting me to move on?
I'm getting you to move on.
Okay, so he explains that most of the gods are dead because people stopped believing in them.
Like Elf.
Like Elvis. Is that what you said? Did you say Elf?
I said Elf. In the end of Elf, where Santa's sleigh can't fly because no one believes in him.
Oh, because he references Elvis, and I thought you just misspoke.
No.
Because he says deader than Elvis.
Elvis did not die because no one believed in him. I don't know why Elf was the film I jumped to. Anyway.
So yeah, because he references Elvis. He says that Athena's deader than Elvis, and then she looks confused, and he has to say, like, who is the guy that is dead? She doesn't know Elvis. He explains that some of the gods are around, and she gets a bit confrontational. She says something like, "Why aren't you doing anything to help these people? And you're just as bad as the other gods." And then he all of a sudden gets nasty, and he does grab her. He says, "You're a feisty little filly," and like grabs her by the throat and gets all angry. But he explains that everything that's happening is a result of Ares indirectly. He says that Strife is Ares' nephew. She's like, "Why does he want more war? There's plenty of war." And he says, "Why do billionaires cheat on their taxes?" So
good.
Yeah,
social commentary.
So he explains that it's all this the everyone's working for Ares, and it's all coming back to this spearhead place, which is the place where that lady whose name I don't remember is working with Strife.
So they break into this building. They kind of have a mini moment at the beginning where they have to pretend to dress up as guards or like businessmen, and they go up to the top and they meet Callus, which is for some reason the big boss. But even though she's just human, and she basically just explains their plan is to destroy the entire city. and they ask, like, why are you doing it? And it's basically just because it will make people afraid, and people that are afraid will spend more money on weapons for war, which... Does it make sense particularly? Not really. But then suddenly it's realised that she called the security guards, and that's why, like, people with machine guns come and they run into the war room, then they run into the temple, then they run into the place where the chimera is being kept, and then they go down into the tunnels where the mural was and the journalist was killed.
They get chased there. This is where Diane and Steve have another big fight. And it's where he explains that we don't need a hero like you, we need a person. And it's the one swear word in the entire script, so it stood out to me. He says, every day you wake up knowing you can go back to paradise, you're not a hero, you're just a fucking tourist.
Oh yeah, no, it did stand out to me, yeah.
He basically explains to her that she's not a hero because she's got privilege and power, so she's not sacrificing anything. And then Strife comes in to hammer this home, by literally taking her powers away from her so that she can prove herself. Because he grabs Steve and says, like, I'll kill him unless you submit to me. So she does. She uses Steve as like a bargaining tool and says, like, surrender and I'll let him live. And so she does, and he binds her with those chains that were mentioned in the opening text that basically turn her human, basically. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then he teleports her to a jungle, and that's why I think they did the teleport to the top of that snowy mountain.
The weird mountain thing, just to establish that it's a thing that he can do.
Yeah. So then Diana has this long, boring thing in the jungle where she has to sort of cope without her powers. Nothing's really said. Nothing much happens. She just sort of wanders around the jungle being human.
It basically repeats the first bit where she goes up to those warlords and easily defeats them. But in this case, it's just 3 people, and she really struggles to fight them. And then at the end, she just breaks free because she realises that she's Wonder Woman.
Yeah. And then her mother's there as well. She's an old lady now.
Yeah.
She's an old,
very unclear.
Old lady in the jungle who's been watching, and it turns out that she's been sort of watching Diana throughout her journey. She was the hooker, the hooker was dressed skimpy.
Yeah, her mother was the hooker,
and she was a couple of other people, like someone at a nightclub, a few other sort of side characters we haven't particularly mentioned. But she's been watching her, and she goes like, "Good, you didn't let them change who you are. I've left you an invisible jet." And so she goes and gets an invisible jet, which I liked. I liked that they put that in there, because it's a nice...
I thought it was just, at this point, I was just kind of like, sure.
Yeah.
Go with it.
So she gets the invisible jet to fly back to fucking city.
I'm glad you can't remember the name of the city, because
Gateway City.
For the life of me. Gateway, yeah.
She flies back to Gateway
Stargate.
City. Meanwhile, Steve and the men have been spending their entire time in one room, because we keep going back to them, and they're just in Steve's room, like, sitting
just
around...
talking about, what are we going to do? We can't do anything. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the drug dealer, Clean, has come by and, like, was eavesdropping on them. And then he goes to the bad guys and says, I know where they are. But it turns out he's triple-crossing them, because off-screen, he's been actually working with Steve and co.
Because Wonder Woman changed his heart.
By telling him he had potential. That was enough. So, when the bad guys arrive to attack Steve and the guys, they've actually walked into a trap! And by a trap, I mean they've walked into a room with cameras and they recreate the ending of Monsters, Inc.
Yeah, the end of this film is Monsters, Inc. because Diana gets sent away like they get sent away to the Andes.
Yeah.
And they have to work their way back, and then the whole thing is about catching the villain on camera. Yeah. It's very similar to Monsters, Inc.
And it's it was very unclear to me as to what the point of this camera thing was.
There is no point, because they don't even show the because they just defeat him afterwards.
He's a god. He's a god. What does he care if he's been exposed? And no one would believe. People would see this because it's live streaming on the internet. People would see it and just go, "What? Huh? And what are they going to do about it?" It's a very unclear plan. But anyway...
Also, if you were to be... Just to be pedantic for one point, if they have set this live stream, that's like if Doctors Without Borders set up a live stream. Because they are, like... They help refugees.
Yeah.
So what is this charity setting up a live stream where they're announcing that the god of war is real? Anyway.
So anyway,
Weird.
Strife calls in a the Chimera and just goes, fuck it, let's end this film. And so a big giant robot.
I think that's actually the line. Yeah, let's end this
So
film.
he jumps on top of a big giant robot monster and it starts rampaging through the town. Steve and the other good guys get in a van and start driving away from it. There's a chase scene. And just as the robot is about to crush the van and kill them, the invisible jet, drives into it and cuts through it or something.
Yeah, it's very... Basically, it just seems like what she does is that she just keeps whacking into it for 2 or 3 times. Like, she's not actually using weapons or anything. And also, weirdly enough, it just seems like it's not described that she's sitting in the jet. She's, lying down. So it looks like she's just kind of flying, weirdly. But then they do the thing that every single aerial flight in a film has to do, where they fly really high up to trick the other one. And it sees how high the other one can fly up. And then Diana flies up the highest, and then comes back down again and chops off one of the heads.
Yes.
Then comes all the way back down again and gets out the jet because they don't need it anymore, apparently.
Yeah. Well, because now we have to have the boss fight. So
Yes.
Steve and the guys are useless at this point.
Even more
And
so.
Diana and Strife have a fight on top of the... Are they fighting on top of the monster? Yeah, they're fighting on top of the robot. She, kicks him off, but then whips around his leg, and so he gets, pulled along through stuff, and then he just sort of...
a whole building's worth of concrete, yeah.
And then I guess we assume he's dead, if you're stupid. They get off, she stabs the robot, kills it, yay, everything's fine. But it's not, because just as her and Steve are about to embrace, Strife shows up with his spear and hits her, and is like, I'm still alive and evil. And then...
Film's not over yet.
and Steve shoots at him, and he disappears. And obviously, because this is why it was important to know that he teleports, Diana's already learnt that he does this, and so she throws his spear at Steve because she knows that he's going to appear in front of Steve to attack him.
Yeah, he's going to do the exact same trick that he did earlier in the film.
And he does.
But instead of appearing behind him, she just knows that he'll appear in front of Steve this
it
time.
would have been very awkward if he did go or just to the side, or a bit further forward than she expected, so he appears, and the spear's between the two of them. And
it goes over his shoulder.
Yeah, many factors she didn't consider here, but luckily it's a dead shot, and she kills him. Ares then appears and goes, I'll get you next time.
It is really that. It's the laziest version of one of those where he just appears and just says why'd you kill my nephew? And she's like, he had to die. He came to the arena. If you come to the arena, you got to bring blood or something like that. And Ares is just like, you.
And then he fucks off, and then we cut really quickly. This is as fast as the film paces it. To be fair, we cut to Themyscira, and some of the Amazonians just go, "Oh shit, she's pissed off Ares." That's enough from us. Back to the other characters.
That's my girl.
And Steve and Diana kiss. And it gets creepy again. It's like the film couldn't end without being creepy. He says something like, "There's no way you learnt to kiss like that on a island filled with just women." And she goes, "That's a story for another time." And he goes, "It can't be as good as the one I'm thinking in my head." Ew.
And then she goes, "Are you sure about that? Just because you need 4 lines to fully, squeeze the humour dry out of that lesbian joke."
And then we cut to some time later. She's praying of Athena.
She just goes to Greece.
Talks about how she's gonna fly, and he goes, "You can't fly," and she goes, "Can't," because we've already established earlier that she doesn't know what "can't" means, so she's gonna...
Every time Steve and Diana argue, the word "can't" gets put up, and he's like, "It's your favourite word." It's not a funny recurring joke, but I suppose if it leads into that brilliant ending of "can't," ironic smile, then it's all worth it. Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I mean, it was a film.
Barely.
It was kind of sexist.
Yes. It definitely was.
Not as sexist as I think so. As I wouldn't call it a sexist nightmare, but there were definitely parts that were creepy from just scene
I
description.
wouldn't say so much as it's terrible. It's just the fact that it's not great, coupled with the fact that it's dated.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be out of place in the 90s, like that version of events. Yeah, I mean, it's messy. You said that it got better as it went on. I thought the exact opposite. Even though the beginning was definitely boring.
I couldn't get through the beginning.
At least it had a clear structure to it.
Alright, I thought it'd get more enjoyable as it went along, at least. I did find the beginning so difficult, which is why this podcast is such a massive gap of time between The Island of Dr. Moreau and this one, because it was so hard to get through that beginning. It is probably I think it is the worst that we've read. I don't know if I think it's the most boring, because Passengers was dull.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree. It's the most, but also, like, that's why I kind of felt that it felt almost like a draft, because I know that I don't particularly love Joss Whedon, but I know he's accomplished, and I know that he can he's done TV, so he knows the structure. Like, TV, you have to do however many episodes, and it always has to do, like, hit all the beats. So it just feels like too much of a mess to feel like this is my final best thing I've ever written or anything. Yeah, I'd say out of all the stuff that we've read, it feels the messiest, but not the least enjoyable. Because, like you said, Passengers was more sexist, and it was funny. It was funnier in how creepy it was. It was just kind of like a bit weird. At least that one you could like fully read out passages and really enjoy how creepy it was. Yeah. Do you have any other points?
No, I think I think we've more or less covered everything, actually.
Right.
I don't know what the next thing we're doing is, but you said you had an idea.
Yes, I do have an idea. I have a Del Toro script that has never been made.
Oh, what is it?
Yeah, actually, I know you like, because especially if you follow the YouTube channel, which I'll promote at the very end of the podcast, while this is a separate podcast on a separate feed, this is all part of Real Opinions, realopinions.com, and we do video reviews on our YouTube channel, and, you know, Harrison's been recently covering Pacific Rim and Shape of Water, so obviously Del Toro's come up enough, but he was originally going to be doing an adaptation of At the Mountains of Madness.
Oh, cool! I didn't know there was a script of that. He's always talking about.
And there is a script of that, so we can read that next time.
That's
great.
I
thought that you'd be happy with that.
That's great. No, I'll actually enjoy that, hopefully.
Yeah.
Unless it's a sexist nightmare as well.
I thought you'd genuinely enjoy that.
That is
so
cool.
It would be nice to try and do a good film again.
To be fair, it was only The Island of Dr. Moreau was good. It's just
It was not bad.
It's been so long between the two.
No, it just felt longer. But because we actually have a script, and because Harrison now has interest in this one, and I have interest in this one, it means that it will hopefully be quicker turnaround for that. And I have another one lined up after that, possibly.
Okay, well, you tell me that one in the next one.
I'm less happy about that. Right, thank you very much for listening. Yeah, as I mentioned, everything on Real Opinions, that is the YouTube channel, all the other social media, as well as we have a separate podcast where it's just us talking about recent films and news occasionally, even rarer. Yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Cool, bye.